discovers that he is not the father of his 3 children and realizes what the wife has done. The doctor had to be wrong. Distressing news he had just given couldn't be right. He was always devoted to his children. But now he had to believe that they weren't yours. Unfortunately, that businessman soon would find that the life he lived was a lie. However, once he discovered the truth, he had to decide what to do about it. Hello my friends, welcome again, and here's the story of man who found out he's not the father of your 3 children. Richard Mason, 55 years old, was a millionaire businessman who lived in the UK. He successfully co-founded Human and Supermarket.com. 17 British price comparison. At the time, Richard was married to a woman named Hot, and they met when they were working together. During the decade 1980, the couple had 3 children together. At least that's what Richard thought them were. Will, the firstborn, AD, and Joel, the younger 4-year-old twins. In 2007, the Richard and Kate's wedding was falling apart, and they were very bad at year 2008. The couple finally decided get divorced. Richard does not feel sorry for his marriage and continues to support the children even after the couple broke up. In the Hot financial deal received a lump sum of $5 million in addition to monthly fees from private school to all 3 guys. However, still Hot chased for years and tried to make me pay more, Richard stated. In the mind of Richard, after a cold wedding and without joy, the children were the only ones good things that came out of that. Neil, however, he would have a company, and I just didn't know yet if 2016 is the year when Richard discovered the truth of this after having been divorced for almost 10 years. One day he got up and prepared to a normal medical consultation. However, the consultation was about to change life Richard's forever. When he walked in at that doctor's office, he didn't have idea that I would leave there furious. Richard went for a routine checkup. However, it ended up not being something so normal, so the doctor performed some tests and the results turned the world around. Richard's upside down. Everything changed when the doctor told Richard that he had cystic fibrosis. Things didn't stop there though. The disease, fibrosis and stretching, causes infections, regular lung damage, lungs over time, breathing. It becomes more and more difficult. Enfelisment of fibrocystica a uma. Doenca genetica ea propria irma de quem. Felicu de doenca varios anos antes tem. Devastado como estava Richard ficu. Com medo de que poderia ter passado isso. Para frente a seus 3 filhos. Felizmente o médico lhe assegurou que não havia como ele passar a doença para eles. Richard não poderia ter ficado mais aliviado, mas infelizmente esse alivio durou pouco tempo porque o médico não tinha terminado de falar ante o médico de uma notícia chocante. Havia uma razão muito específica pela qual ele não poderia ter passado a doença. Aquele momento fez com que toda a vida de Richard desmoronasse único instante quando a discussão se voltou para a fertilidade. Ele disse: preciso falar para você que você terá dificuldade ter filhos porque você é homem com fibrocística infértil. Mas isso parecia impossível para Richard Eli Engsergu Enteo Uma Faceca de Esperanca Sarah K Iso Foi Malagar Medico ou Medico talvez eu tenha Diagnostica do mal deve ter sido Diagnóstico errado porque eu já tenho Trace rapazes Richard Se o orgulhoso na Verdade me senti abençoado por ser capaz de dizer isso a ele porque minha mente isso provava que ser diagnóstico estava errado por o médico. Apenas balanco a cabeça tristement Enteo Richard sub que ele estava assim. Agarrando falsas esperanças Percepco ocorreu lentamente Richard. Enteo a verdade o atingiu como uma teo. Ele repasso sua vida com Kate e alhu. Para cada detalhe msua mente ele. Comico a se sentir mal isso neo pediria. Estar acontecendo se algo escândalo neo. Tivesse acontecido foi bem debaixo do. Seu proprio teto foi isso ele era. Sigo demais para perceber a final ele. Trabalhava tarde no maioria das noites. Unfortunately cystic fibrosis is a genetic disease and whose own sister died of the disease several years before as devastated as Richard was. Scared that we might have passed it. In front of their 3 children. Luckily the doctor assured him that there was no way he could pass the disease on to. Richard couldn't have stayed longer. Relieved, but unfortunately this relief lasted a short time because the doctor did not. I had finished talking then doctor of a shocking news. There was a very specific reason why. Which he could not have gone to. Disease that moment made the whole. Richard's life collapsed into a single moment when the discussion turned. For fertility he said, look. I need to tell you that you will have difficulty having children because you are an infertile man with cystic fibrosis. Oh, but it seemed impossible for Richard. He then saw a spark of hope. Was this a miracle? Doctor, maybe I have misdiagnosed. Must have been a wrong diagnosis because I already have 3 boys. Richard, if the proud I actually felt blessed to be able to tell him that because in my mind it proved that being a diagnosis was wrong, but the doctor just shook his head sadly, and then Richard knew he was clinging to false hopes. Realization came slowly to Richard. Then the truth hit him like a teo. He replayed his life with Kate and looked for every detail in his mind, and he started to feel bad that couldn't be happening if some scandal doesn't had happened. It was right under his own ceiling is gone that he was too blind to notice him at all. Worked late at most nights. Richard snorted in disgust and remembered from when she traveled and said she was a work trip, but that there were others. Details arising which he did not could predict when his twins were born. It is clear that people started commenting. They have your eyes, Kate. Now he start to take a darker turn in his mind. There were other red flags that Richard hadn't given much thought. At that time, soon after Hot found out who was pregnant with her first child, she began to express interest in something she had never mentioned during the 7 years of marriage. Hello Kitty was ecstatic to be pregnant for the first time. She read them all, the maternity books, and went to the childbirth classes, but suddenly she Interested in Judaism. Richard was surprised since he was hot. Were raised as Christians they were. Even further and gave all three children middle names their God and she if refused to baptize them she was also seeking advice from a rabbi and maybe that was a view of life duo she was taking and maybe this clue pointed to the man who she was leaving. Richard knew his sons did not appear in anything with him but so familiar the clues were adding up and Richard was beginning to think I knew who the man was. His wife was watching. There was another thing he was forced to consider. Hodder would confess or that all was just a terrible mistake. Richard pondered information then pasted. In your mother I had 3 clues too. Following the first was the fact of its ex-wife probably have found with a man has how much she I was on a business trip. The second was that their children looked like a man he met before, a colleague of Katie's work. What would make sense? And finally that the man was a Jew. What? It didn't make sense. But twins are rare after all. General population twin pregnancies identical occur 0.45 of the times or 1 in 250 birth in. It is also a well-known fact that the use of fertility treatments increased the probability of conceiving twins and whether here had realized they were having fertility problems before. After all they had been married for 7 years when Hot finally got pregnant. But that was enough speculation too. One day it was time to confront her. He angrily typed a kit and demanded one explanation. 98% sure they are not father of no children, he added. A message sent and that I had read, but was not willing to answer. Since being civilized did not give him the answers, Richard decided it was time to take a tougher approach. I was hoping you could relieve me of too much indignity tests, leaving me know now if your father Richard wrote suffer this you follow my advice on the best way to count the boys, but if you force me to go through these extra tests so I will tell them. Cornered. Minutes later she sent her answer. Of course boys are. It's no matter what science may suggest, she wrote. Richard was incredulous, but it was okay if that we wanted to play him hard. Could play. Also approached the eldest son, who was a college student at the time. He told everything and like I said, yes, one more of the things. What I've been told is that it's extremely unlikely that someone with fibrosis cystic can have a child, he said. You're saying probably not. It's my dad. Richard got the heart broken into thinking he wasn't the father biological of your son. That was the hardest sentence to pronounce, and he did it for me. So Richard told his eldest son, who of course it was still his dad obviously, but what? He didn't think I had conceived. Everything was very emotional, but so was I. Was very angry. Richard said that had received a double blow that day. Then he didn't know what he was going to do about this. Richard believes his children define who you are, so he doesn't just been diagnosed with a disease. Feared, but now he knew he really had no children. Legacy to Leah with him, and this thought was very difficult. Okay then. Twice later he finally heard talk about Kate happens, how hot it was. Confronted by her eldest son and they're called Richard, and confessed her. Admitted that he was seeing another man during marriage, and to add insult to injury, Richard Even one met the man in passing. Worked at Barclays Bank and I was in a hotel in London. While she traveled to work as unionist, but she still insists here. Richard was the father of his children. He did not. Had no choice but to get the opinion of an expert, and he knew that the last 20 years of your life have been a complete lie. Decided to seek advice from paternity fraud specialist Roger Terrell, and after he passed by various tests, it was confirmed that Richard was really able to generate children. The next step was to get DNA samples from your children, or the use of the DNA test proved that the twins, they weren't his. But to complicate things further, but his eldest son refused to provide a sample. The eldest son, Richard, claimed he was his father and ready, but still Richard had all the evidence you needed to initiate legal proceedings against Kat. On December 2016, he started a lawsuit in court in County Birmingham, but his eldest son had another message to the man he used to know. How his father, the teenager, kept himself true to his word, and of course that caused a huge headache. Richard. Today, the cascade of lies effect of Kate had been huge. The reaction of the twins, as I ask advanced, was quite different, despite them still consider Richard as their father anyway. Knowing he is not your biological father. One of the twins even sent a message from support for him. Hi Dad, as I explained from the beginning, you will always be my father to me, regardless of everything. When the lies, unbelievable pictures of Kate were exposed in the court, Richard won the case, and Kate was sentenced to pay more than $300,000 earned in making a agreement, but on one condition: the man who is the real father of your children should remain anonymous. But this turned out to be a hollow victory for Richard. Richard stated that he would like the biological father see if the case article, and if he came forward, he believes that the boys have a right to know who their father was. That for him was a least for the sake of the boys, because they would want to know who the father was. True of them. I hope they always think of me as their father. So, and unfortunately, situations like these turn out to be more common than we imagine. And you friends, what do you think? You've seen similar cases with those close to you? Leave your comment, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel and activate the bell for more stories like this come to you. A strong hugs until the next video.